Hello and welcome to another edition on the Biblewheel. We're going to be looking at the fifth spoke, which consists of the fifth book of the Bible, which is Deuteronomy, the fifth book of the first cycle, which is Deuteronomy, the fifth book of the second cycle, which is the book of Daniel, the prophecies of Daniel, and the fifth book, possibly, of the third cycle, which is the epistle to the Ephesians. And when we look at the 5th century, I haven't looked into it as much, but I am reminded of the Armenian priest Mesrop Mashtots, who founded the Armenian alphabet. He was supposedly had a vision that God's hand was writing the alphabet, and this reminds me of the handwriting on the wall in the book of Daniel. Now, whether this was a true event or just a legend, I'm not sure, but it does historically it does coincide with the fifth book of the second cycle, that is. But in Deuteronomy, the fifth book of the first cycle, it does mention that God wrote the commandments with his hand, with his fingers. And also Armenia was conquered by the Parthians in the 5th century, and it was divided into two territories. One that eventually joined the Byzantine Empire, and the second part was conquered by the Parthians. When Mesrop Mashtots invented the Armenian alphabet, first of all, he did invent it because it would be easier to teach from Armenian, instead of looking into the Syriac text, instead of looking to the Greek text and so on, because of pronunciation differences. He would rather translate the writings and then teach it as is to Armenians. But they were under the Sassanid rule, and the Sassanids didn't mind the conversion. The Sassanids didn't mind the invention of the alphabet. However, when they noticed that there were students that were sent to Constantinople to study, that outraged them, and they thought that by inventing the Armenians having their own alphabet, they would have their own independence from the Byzantines. However, they noticed that it's the opposite. They went to Constantinople to study, to learn, and they drew closer to the Byzantines, and that's why there was an outrage, there was war, and that's when Vatan Mamikonian, for example, when he noticed that they're gonna be in war, they called for help to Emperor Theodosius. Theodosius was the emperor at the time. He was also a lawgiver, well, I can't say like Moses, but it does remind you of Moses. But when Theodosius heard, he sent his men to help the Armenians, but it was too late. The war was fought, and the Sassanids had won. And also there was the Council of Ephesus, which happened, I believe it was in 431 or 451. There was the issue of Nestorius, that Jesus was, he was from the school of Antioch originally, and he seemed to have a lot of followers. But he did say that Jesus was, or Mary was he wasn't the God bearer, he was the Christ bearer. But the reason he was considered a heretic was because he considered Christ as a creature, as a created being. And yeah. And that's it for the 5th century.